as well.
So I counsel or mentor a lot of Rangers that are getting out of the service and they want to go work for themselves. They want to go be an entrepreneur. And when we really get down to it, they don't know what that means.
Right.
As somebody who's done it your whole life, what are some of the things they should know before they step into that space?
Well, I think you should understand what the word entrepreneurial means. And I've always said that an entrepreneur is someone who promises something they do not have with every intention of delivering it on time. So you have to be able to say, hey, this is a great idea, but I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And I think when you come out of a structured environment sometimes, or if it's overly structured, you don't really understand that.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest is Don Barden. I've known Don for a while now. I met him a few years ago when he came to 3rd Ranger Battalion for a leadership symposium. And I knew immediately after Don started talking and everybody got their notebooks out and was recording everything Don was saying vigorously, I was like, I need to connect with this guy outside of this room and try to link him up with myself as a mentor. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. I've known Don for a few years. And anytime I'm going to do anything in the business realm or have an idea about my own transition, I immediately hit up Don and try to get his advice on it. And I try to link in other people with Don for his mentorship. And when I'm doing that I explained Don, I said, you've probably seen the commercial about the most interesting man in the world. And I say, that's Don Barden, right? That's who you're going into. So be ready when you get in there. I think that he might be the original most interesting man in the world. I'm super excited to have him on today. I know we're going to gain some great insight for it. And just thanks for driving down for Atlanta. And I'll quit taking over the time and pass it over to you, Don.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I've always said if you're going to make something up, make it good. So keep going. I like that, most interesting man in the world. I'll take that moniker. That's really a lot of fun. So I appreciate it. But thanks for having me. I love your work. I love what you're doing here. And for anybody watching this podcast, go back and look at all the past episodes because everybody you've had on here has this touch of humanity. And I love the theme about vulnerability and leadership. But you've done a great job bringing some really wise souls to the table here. So I'm honored to be here. I'll try not to mess up your mojo.
Yeah, I don't think you'll mess it up. And of course, and I know Don's ready for this, going to go off script a little bit.
Yeah, I imagine we've already gone off script, so it's fine.
Ask you something as we're on the eve of 9/11.
Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah.
From your perspective outside of the military that happened, what are your thoughts on it as we come up on that anniversary?
That's a big question. There's a lot happening right now. I was thinking about this the other day. We have an entire generation of people in the workforce right now who are out there who are looking for leadership. They're young, they're impressionable, and they have very little to no memory of 9/11. So when you're talking about 20 years and say somebody's 27 now, or maybe even 30, they were a small child when that happened. So there's a lot of people out there who just don't realize the impact of some more mature ages like ourselves. Right. So there's an interesting dynamic happening with that. And I told somebody the other day, I'm 57 years old. I was born closer to D-Day in Normandy than people are born today to 9/11. And that just messed up my head really bad.
Yeah, it just messed mine up a little bit.
Yeah, because you think back on history and you think, wow, this, it keeps moving. Life keeps moving ahead. Life finds a way, right? And we have found a way as a society and as a culture. But, 9/11 was this generation's impact moment, just like Pearl Harbor or, anything else was. So it's certainly a reverent point to sit back and think about that we all live in a very, very dangerous world. And we're a little bit insulated here in the United States. It really is the greatest country in the world, and it's something that we should be very grateful for. But every once in a while, the universe just reminds us that there's other things out there who have other thoughts, and we need to recognize that. So I think it's more important that it's 20 years because it is more of a mess with your head. It's like a blink of an eye. I remember exactly where I was and what was happening. A little sidebar, I was supposed to be at 1 Madison Avenue that morning, which had been a few blocks away, and our boardroom overlooked that area. And at the last second, the meeting got moved to about a week earlier, and I would have been there. I would have seen that and been a part of it. And I'm grateful that I wasn't. But at the same time, it's like, wow, things just happen to move you, protect you, make it where it's supposed to be. And, I knew a lot of people who, unfortunately, that was a really bad day,
right.
For them and for their families. And that's really tough. But, life finds a way. We move forward, but it's important not to forget, but it's also important not to dwell.
Right.
So it's an important thing. But 20 years, man, flash of an eye, blink of an eye. It's just over.
Blink of an eye. Everything that's happened in the last month with Afghanistan and its ties to that.
Yeah.
It kind of compounds everything that happened 20 years ago. So get straight into it. Straight into the topic of this podcast. You've been in business your whole life.
Yeah.
Husband, father. What's vulnerability mean to you?
Vulnerability. That's a great question. I think vulnerability is about being honest. It's about accepting from a leadership position who you are. And I mean, it's a huge question. You ask all these big questions. This is great. Like, how do you answer this in one sit down? But vulnerability is about being honest, accepting who you are, knowing what your unique ability is, and knowing what you're excellent at, knowing what you're competent at, knowing what you're incompetent at,
Absolutely.
And admitting it, and finding other people around you that your incompetence is actually their unique ability, and that when you come together, that you can accomplish great things if everybody's working on the same team. But I told somebody the other day in preparation for this, I was so excited about coming down and being on your show. I said, it's about vulnerability. And they said, well, how would you define vulnerability? And I said, well, it's kind of like this concept that fear and courage are not mutually exclusive. They can live side by side. So my kind of running joke on this is, fear is what happens when you wet your pants. Courage is what you do when you're wearing wet pants.
Oh, wow.
And every leader out there faces that moment, right? And you just have to be vulnerable and stand up saying, yeah, this isn't what I expected you to see today, but we've got to move forward. And it's about being honest and understanding that fear and courage are not exclusive of each other. They can live side by side. Right. And in leadership, you have to be able to harness both of them and move forward. And I think that's the key to vulnerability.
Right. I think kind of owning your own greatness and owning all of it. So, in all those years in business, a lot of service members, they want to transition out, be entrepreneurs, do this and that. What are some of those moments of vulnerability on the business side that some of the listeners who have just been in the Army for 4 years or 25 years that you encounter that we're not used to?
Sure. The one thing that the military, the Army in particular, brings to somebody's life is structure. That there is a different set of rules in the military. There's a different set of rank and organization. And sometimes you don't need to know why you've been told to do something in the Army. You just have to go do it because you were told what to do. The private sector doesn't have that. It's very, very unstructured. It's very, very chaotic. And as many times as people in leadership like myself try to create structure, you do it not from a tight fit like the military attempts to do, but more of a set of guardrails. And you say, look, these are the guardrails that we've got on each side of us. We need to go toward this objective, whatever it is. And you need to be the best leader you can be, or the best performer, or the best whatever. Take your skill set, your unique ability, and go out there and apply it and do it. But it's within these guardrails. So the biggest and the most challenging thing I see from most service people transitioning is that they lose that structure. And especially if they spent 10, 15, 20 years like you or more, that's an aha moment when they realize that the world is not that fitting. All the puzzle pieces don't fit together, and you've got to go out there and deal with it. But on the flip side, one of the unique abilities of most service people is their ability to handle chaos, to adapt, to make changes. They just have to give themselves permission to do it. And I think that's what the private sector is looking for. Take that skill set, bring it to the private sector, but give yourself permission to realize it's not that structured, and I can actually do better than most people out there. So it's a great place to be.
So when somebody's looking for that structure, either just transitioning out of college maybe or out of the military, what's a way to start going down that path to try to find it?
Oh boy. It's impossible. You can't, because so many people, so many organizations have two fronts. The face that they put out in public relations that you see and you think, oh, this is just a well-oiled machine and we're going to be there. And then you go to work for that organization and you realize that there's an enormous amount of duct tape and twine, holding it together. And I'm talking about some Fortune 100 companies, some gigantic companies don't have the structure that they say that they do. So what I tell people, especially transitioning out, even if you're restarting in an earlier or a later stage in life, or you're coming right out of college, maybe you've done 2, 3, 4 years in the military and you're moving on, is that you go forward knowing that you should expect 3 10-year careers. In other words, go learn something and work for an organization for 3 years and then go somewhere else, because now your skills have taken themselves up a notch. And then you go somewhere else, and then you go somewhere else. And the military does that, but it holds it within its thing. You get rank, you get to go to Ranger School, you get to do different things. But the corporate world is the exact same thing. So it's not that you should go seek structure, it's that you should find your unique abilities, maximize the opportunity to work in whatever career it is, learn these skills, give back. I mean, you're paid to do a job, so go do it. But know that every 3 years you should be making a jump. You should be doing something to elevate your desire to go learn and do stuff. But what most people don't realize is there's a very big parallel between sports and business. And if you're a first-round draft pick, there's a bidding war going on for you. You're like a free agent in football or the NFL or whatever. And you can command a lot more money and a lot more attention as these skill sets grow. And if you do move around a bit, then that makes you all the more attractive. So I guess the only way of saying don't look for structure, just look within yourself and maximize the opportunity you have to every 3 years you're making a jump.
I think that's a great caveat for this next question, because you said grow, you said learn. What's the importance of lifelong learning? I mean, you're 57 years old and you still are learning every day.
Yeah.
What's the importance of that?
You cannot get better unless you learn. And I guess that goes back to vulnerability too, because so many people get out there and think, oh, I've done this, or I've accomplished this, or I've built a business and sold it, so I must know everything. You don't know crap. Tomorrow's a different day with a different formula, different group of people, different cultures, different languages, everything. So you're constantly open-minded. And again, going back to the theme of vulnerability is when you say to yourself, wow, I don't know everything. And there's some really, really smart people out there who I need in my life. But guess what? They need you too. So let's get together, and you can learn from them. They can learn from you, and you just keep going. That's why I'm so adamantly opposed to retirement. I've told people, first of all, I know you're from New Mexico, but in the South, we use that word properly. When somebody says they're retiring, you might say, well, after dinner, I'm going to retire to my study, or retire to my bedroom. Retirement literally means to move to a point of isolation, to go be by yourself. And I'm like, what a horrible thing in a person's life to say, I'm done. And to walk away, especially when you got some age behind you. You're at the peak of research and development. Keep going, keep learning, keep sharing. Don't retire, don't go be by yourself. Keep going. And that comes from a commitment to learning and just opening your mind to say what else is out there. It's a really big world.
Yeah, and the word retirement, when you say that from the military, I'm 40 years old and I'll retire from the Army. I hate that term because that's not what I'm doing. I'm transitioning to something new.
Absolutely.
And you're right, it's about the way words mean things, right? And will change behavior and emotions. And emotion drives behavior. So.
Yeah, there's all types of studies out there about people who retire have a shorter lifespan after they retire than those who say, no, I'm going to keep contributing and keep working. Now, does it mean you need to work 24/7, 360? No. But, you can go out there and still make a big impact and be successful. But there's also a point in leadership, especially in vulnerability, is when you get to start transferring some knowledge and you get to say, hey, look, I've seen this before, or I've experienced this real life movie. Let me share with our team something. And what you're doing in the social structure of leadership is you're actually accelerating somebody else's path. So if it took me 57 years to learn it, and I can sit down and explain it to a 23-year-old intern in 30 minutes, then that just saved them, 40, 50 years of their life. So why not share that and transition that and help them grow, which I think is a big part of vulnerability as well.
So I counsel or mentor a lot of Rangers that are getting out of the service and they want to go work for themselves. They want to go be an entrepreneur. And when we really get down to it, they don't know what that means. Right. As somebody who's done it your whole life, what are some of the things they should know before they step into that space?
Well, I think you should understand what the word entrepreneurial means. And I've always said that an entrepreneur is someone who promises something they do not have with every intention of delivering it on time. So you have to be able to say, hey, this is a great idea, but I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And I think when you come out of a structured environment sometimes, or if it's overly structured, you don't really understand that. And you say to yourself, wow, well, I've got to get all this stuff in order. That's not how entrepreneur systems work. You have to be committed with enormous amounts of courage and fear, going back to our first thing, and move forward. But you have to make a commitment. You have to seek those capabilities that are necessary, and you have to go out there and do it. But, so many people, I know this is a long answer to your question, but so many people have this great idea in entrepreneurship, they just go do it. That's the worst thing you can do. You actually have to follow a few steps. Number one, you have to understand the market. You have to say, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm going to open up a new coffee shop or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so you understand it. Now you have to imagine it and say, okay, I can imagine it sitting on the corner out there and cars wrapped around the block and it's going to be great. Well, do you know how to make coffee? No. Okay, well, let's go prototype it, So now you got to go out there and test it, and prototype it and make it. Then you have to validate it. Yeah. Then you got to go out there and put up a sign and maybe go to a couple festivals or something and give away free coffee and get people to say, yeah, I'll buy that. I'll transfer currency or value for that. Then you're allowed to launch. Yeah. So you have to understand it, you have to imagine it, you have to prototype it, you have to validate it, and then you can launch it. Most people imagine it and go straight to launch.
Right.
And they realize, oh, nobody wants this just because I think it's cool, nobody else wants it? No, they don't. Or, man, I'm 2 years too early. Well, it's going to be a long 2 years for you. Right. So you have to be so committed that you're going to make this happen and you're going to believe that it's going to happen, but you got to have a little bit of discipline and go through some steps, because there's a lot of times that, I always say this a lot, no is a complete sentence. Especially if we put a period behind it. No, period. That's a complete sentence, okay? Right. So the market tells you no, it means it, okay? But it doesn't mean forever. So you might have this great idea for a coffee shop or whatever, or especially with the acumen of the Ranger folks coming out, they might be saying, I can do this. I know I can do this. Well, the universe might be telling you, yeah, you can do that, but you better wait about 3 years.
Right.
Or I think this will be ready in 5 years. So no doesn't mean no forever. It just means not now.
Right.
So, but you have to go through some processes.
And I think some of those processes you said in there, discipline, and what I've said in the military and heard said is initiative, and then you put them together, you have disciplined initiative you got to do there. And you kind of touched on a bunch of things there, and like creativity. I think creativity can be undervalued and not seen as a critical thinking function in creativity. What are your thoughts on creativity and the creative mindset? Well,
creativity is a great stimulus. If you look at how the brain works on a cognitive and cognitive side, people bond together with gratitude. And you've heard me talk about this when we do the leadership and development programs here. Gratitude is an expression from leadership to the people that are under your command or under your watch. Creates a bonding thing. But in the same way those chemicals work in your brain, and I don't want some psychoanalyst saying there's no chemicals, it's neuronic. Sure, I know, it's neurons, whatever's firing up, however your brain works. The same way gratitude bonds people together, creativity is a stimulus. So creativity means that if you're thinking differently, if you're thinking about a new idea, people will actually be magnetized towards you because it's so creative. And that's what people want. Now, creative doesn't mean artsy and color schemes and, all this weird stuff. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not what it means. Creativity means that you're willing to think differently about how you think, about the way that you think about your thinking. So you can look at it and say, well, I've always done it this way. Maybe I should think differently about it. And then as you start to express that, you'll find people just attracted to you and attracted to your idea and your leadership, and they want to be a part of that. Yeah. And then you go through the steps, and if something works, you follow it. But creativity is the great stimulus. It's the great magnet, the attractor that makes things happen.
Right. Same as in transition in any space and in business, you're going to run into adversity or 3-foot walls or issues. How do you attack adversity or things when they don't go right or go as planned? And back to vulnerability, I think I've heard you say it. Vulnerable is when you can't make payroll on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know if you're going to be able to pay your employees on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
When you run into those problems, how do you approach them?
Well, I heard a great leadership guy, John Maxwell, years ago talk about this. And he actually impacted my life with this. Not that I remember it specifically, but it was May 23rd, 1996, 4:30 in the afternoon. I heard him give a speech about the very same subject. And I've gotten to know John over the years, and all these kudos to him for what he does. But he said, sometimes when you're up against a wall, he said, people throw up these Hail Mary prayers or this begging for help about how do you get on the other side of the wall. Well, the first step is to see what the wall is. So you're actually asking or praying or thinking about the wrong thing. And if you think about it, if you're standing up against a wall like this, you've lost all peripheral vision because your nose is right against it. If you just step back, that wall might only be 3 feet wide. But when you're shoved up against it, you think, oh my God, this is the whole universe is around me. Just walk around it or knock it down or go over it or just laugh at it, you know. But too many people run into these obstacles in their life, in their career, and they're so focused on the obstacle or focused on getting on the other side, they don't really realize what that challenge is. And sometimes it's taking a breath, stepping back, seek wise counsel, you know, ask other people, hey, from your viewpoint over there, what does this look like? And then you'll be able to see it a little bit differently and do it. But yeah, most people mess that up.
Right.
You know, they try to figure out how to get on the other side when they realize the wall's not that big,
right.
Or they never realized the wall wasn't that big.
Right.
I'm sorry, they think it was just, you know, some monolith or something. It's just not.
And it's perspective. Change your perspective.
Yeah.
How you're looking at things. If you're in the military, what you just heard, he just gave you a breacher assessment. You know, we don't just go and blow the wall or blow the door. We assess it and see what charge we have to use and the standoff we have to need.
Yeah.
Everything you've done in the military translates. You just got to figure out how to translate.
Yeah, but I think in the military transition, you've got to give yourself permission to translate those terms. You just did that beautifully. That was magnificent. I get it. Military guys will get that too. But when you get out there and you talk about breaching, they're like, what? Why? That means something else. That's actually an accounting and a tax term. You don't want to do that, right? So to take these skill sets that the folks in the military they're transitioning out and just change the language a little bit. That's what the private sector is looking for, because honestly, I think your buddies are much more skilled and educated to perform in the private sector than they realize. The private sector 100% realizes it and they want it. It's just, how do you use different words? How do you transition your terminology and your way of thinking? So going back to the creativity thing, it's about changing the way you think about how you think about the way that you think about your thinking.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's going to be asked to remember it, I know. Yeah. I'll see if I can remember that. But that's what you got to do. Just change the words a little bit. Same thing.
Yeah, and what I preach to guys when they're in transition, I say emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Like
it starts with you. You got to start from center. You got to know yourself before you go out and chase everything else. What's emotional intelligence mean to Don?
Oh gosh, emotional intelligence and emotional quotient, the ability to express emotions to other people is the most important thing. If you're a very stringent leader and you're sort of dictatorial and you're a micromanager, then you're going to get those type of results. You know, it'll be all about the KPIs. It'll all be about, do the task. And the second somebody comes up with a more appealing culture or more appealing atmosphere for people to do, they're going to jump ship on you faster than you're prepared to do. So to me, it's two parts. The intellectual ability to understand who you are and the emotional thing about who you are leads to your ability to say, I can't do this on my own. And this is another great part. It's a good transition point here. The biggest thing that most great business leaders are looking for, especially in service folks coming out, is who, not how. Yeah. And we run a gigantic bioscience company right now. And I can talk the talk and I understand it, but I'm not a biochemist. I'm not a bioscientist, but I know who is. So I don't need to know how to do something. I just need to know who knows how to do something and hire them. So part of that emotional and the intellectual intelligence is saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't need to know how to do it. But I need to know who knows how to do it and go find them, which I guess on theme is vulnerability, right? Yeah. Who, not how, I think is probably the greatest thing I've learned in all of business. Yeah, it is. And you have to admit that you can't do it. Right. That's the best part.
Absolutely. And surround yourself with a team, the right team. So before we bounce off of adversity, I just want pandemic hits. Yeah. You're a businessman.
I heard about that. Yeah.
That's a massive change in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I know that we could do like a whole podcast on it, but what did you do? What was your first action when something like that happens?
Yeah, when it first happened, and not to go into the details of the story, but we were opening up a new company, and we spent 2 years building this thing, and we were about to launch. And President Trump shut the country down on March 13th, and we opened up. That was on a Friday, and we opened up the following Monday. Oh. So couldn't have picked worse time. But we look at obstacles as opportunity. And again, going back to the walls and things. So we're like, this is a big obstacle in front of us. How do we make people's lives better? How do we serve them? What can we do? And we had some really, really bright people on our team who came to us, and some of the ideas were insane. I mean, we shot them down immediately, going, keep thinking that way, but no, we're not going to do that. One of our scientists came up to us and said, we have the facilities here to start manufacturing sanitation and disinfectant type materials. And so I was like, why would we do that? And they said, go try to find it. You can't find it. Yeah. So that day we were on calls with the governor and some other people and said, hey, if you need some help, we can dedicate some square footage to this. Well, before we knew it, it wasn't just square footage. It was entire buildings we were dedicating toward this. We became Costco's #1 product for the majority of last summer. And it was the ability to improvise and adapt to fulfill the needs of what the market was saying. Now, we've since sold off that division because that's not what we do. But we were able to look at an opportunity to serve other people. We were able to look at these obstacles and turn them into cash flow, which, the money's always in the obstacles, always. So go back to Uber. Uber looked at it and said, it's kind of hard to get a cab sometimes. That's an obstacle. So instead of sitting there saying, I wish we had, a better way of getting a cab, or I wish I had cabs running out to me. No, let's just change the whole dynamics of it and reinvent, everything. So Uber made money by taking an obstacle and turning it into an opportunity. So I think that's what great organizations have done during the pandemic is they've said, yeah, nobody likes this, but what can we do during that short period of time to turn it into opportunity, but be focused on serving other people? And there's some great, great businesses and things that are happening, out of this. And it bought us a year and a half that we needed, gave us a cash flow that we needed to do it. Some great things emerged from it. Relationships that we would have never gotten as fast as we did happened. And now we're one of the largest companies in the world doing what we do. So, and I never would have said that was going to, if you told me to draw out a playbook on March 12th of 2020, I guess,
yeah,
so I couldn't have done this for anything in the world, but we were able to improvise and adapt and turn the obstacles into opportunity. Yeah. So pandemic worked for businesses who cared and wanted to do the right thing.
And I think you hit on a thing. There's service.
Yeah,
that's what
serving others.
I tell transitioning service members. You have a heart of service that brought you into this organization. Find somewhere where somebody has a need, then you can continue to serve.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on just service in general?
Yeah, that's why we exist on the planet. Is to serve other people. And the older you get to be around a lot of different times of people's lives, especially toward the end. And people never talk about the money they made. They never talk about any of that stuff. They talk about that connection they had with other people. And people will remember you because of how you help them and how you serve them. So I really think serving other people is the core of who we are as human beings. And if you can transition that into the opportunity to grow, then and to do more things and follow an opportunity. So you can look at it and say, hey, I want to serve others, but I want to do big things to very, very few people. Okay, go do that. Or you could say, I got this little bitty nothing, but you know what? I can touch a lot of people's life, and just for a minute or two during the day, I can make their life better. Go do that. There's so many opportunities to serve other people and one of our sayings is our only objective is to make somebody else's tomorrow better than their today. And if we can go to work every day and try to accomplish that, things just work out. If you go at it all about the money, you'll fail. If you go at it all about making sure everything is perfect and in the right box, you're going to fail. But if you go out there and say our only existence is to serve other people, it's like the universe just moves all those obstacles out of the way, or it shows you the obstacles that you can turn into opportunity.
Yeah, that amazingly said. So you've had a few challenges, right?
Yeah.
Over your years. The economic crash, 2006, 7.
Go back older than that, but I think there was 87. There was 99. There was. I've had a few. I've seen a few bubbles burst.
And one thing I ask all my service members is, what was your most challenging day in uniform? What was that day that you just go back to and you kind of that's just there that you can never seem to get away from? Yeah. What was your most challenging day as a businessman?
There's too many to know. I'll be honest with you, because What happens is in the moment, you think it's the worst thing that ever happened to you. The stock market crash of 87, the dot-com bubble in the late 90s, 98, 99. You think, oh my God, what happened? And then you realize 6 months later, you don't even remember it. Because what's happened is you elevate your game to a level where the next crisis, bigger crisis, you're able to handle that a little bit better. I will tell you though, the hardest thing I've ever had to do is look somebody in the eye and release them, fire them, let them go from the company, because I value jobs. And that's the greatest thing I think I could ever accomplish, is the amount of jobs that we give people. Because going back to what I said earlier, if people have 10 3-year careers, then that means there's 10 big moments in their life where they make a decision. If that decision was to be with you and there's this transfer of value and you can give them a better home life, and it's just, I've had people come up to me before and say, hey, thank you, I can finally afford to buy my first car, or I bought my first house because I have this job here. That just, oh my God, that's why we get up in the morning, right?
Absolutely.
But the reverse is when you say, okay, well, we've sold a division, or the market just doesn't want this anymore, we have to close this down, and you have to let somebody go. That's far worse than a stock market crash or anything else. But you have to approach it that you're not letting them go, you're releasing them to find something better. So going back to, even in firing somebody, your hope is that they'll still have a better tomorrow, and their life will go on to find something better. But I think firing somebody and letting somebody go is much worse than any of the economic stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine. Showing empathy, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Not sympathy, and wanting to be so.
Yeah. Although a good public hanging never hurts. Every once in a while you just gotta do it, but usually that's well deserved, right. And it's not a surprise to anybody. Yeah, absolutely. So it's fine.
So although you never served in the military,
I worked for the Department of Defense a lot. I spent some time early in my career in what was then, for the historians out there, East and West Germany, but never worked at it. I never went through pure basic and did all those things.
Right.
So I spent the first 13 or 14 years of my life in draft mode,
Oh, yeah.
Being of age, and the older kids in the neighborhood, going away and not coming back. And then, so it was sort of a monumental part of my life. My dad was he was Patton's Third Army, Third Armor, 65th Tank Battalion. The movie Fury?
Yes.
That was my dad, the old M1s and M4 Shermans. But he was occupation forces right after that. So I kind of grew up in a military family. My earliest memory was here at Fort Benning. My dad taking me and bringing me here. And I told people it's sort of like the real life Gomer Pyle. I don't know, hope to God they don't have those anymore. But those old aluminum half shell buildings, yes. Please tell me they've gotten rid of those.
There's a few around.
Are they? Okay. But they used to let me play in the tanks. Now, in my mind, it was a live tank. Right. I'm sure it was an old thing sitting over in the corner. They let some little kid crawl up in there and play. But I was so honored a few years ago to a member of regiment, honors and things. And I remember saying this to the regiment. When I was talking about it, it's my dad. Those armor guys back then, they were tough dudes.
Yeah.
They smelled like gas and grease, and they were all deaf because they didn't ever wear their earpieces or anything because they were. You don't do that. But my dad used to always say, when he brought me here, he'd say, yeah, but look at those Rangers. Those guys are special. He said, there's something different about the Rangers. So that's always been, a big part of it. But it was just timing. The way it came up, the draft had ended. I didn't have to. I was about to go do something. An Eagle Call went down, which, was the not so desirable outcome in Iran. And my dad discouraged me greatly from doing that. But, I did get a few phone calls from the Department of Defense. They said, you've got some unique skills we'd like to chat with you about. So I did some stuff. I always tell people, I was talking about this in the pre-interview with you, that my life's been somewhere between Jack Ryan, Jason Bourne, and Forrest Gump. But unfortunately, it leans more toward Forrest Gump. But hey, he had a good time too.
Yeah,
so it was fine. Yeah. But no, I have such an appreciation for the military. I grew up in it. It's just timing thing.
Yeah. So in your time with being in and around the 75th, part of the Sua Sponte Foundation board.
Yep.
We spoke about it a little bit, but what are some of those qualities that leaders from this organization can translate immediately into their next role when they take the uniform off?
Yeah, it's I can tell you real straight. It's understanding the desired outcome and creating a mission orientation to go do it. So many people in the private sector, in the business world, I don't don't want to say this and sound bad, but they want to clock in and clock out. They want a job, and there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody says, I want to do this and I will pack as many boxes or load as many trucks today, but when it's over, I'm going home. Those are people you tell what to do. You pay them to do it because you need it. What the guys in the regiment and the men and women in regiment come out with is this sort of different level, right? Where they say, okay, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? How can I contribute to that? What do you need me to do? And especially in the Ranger Regiment, there's this just embedded thing of you can figure it out. You can make it happen because, like I said, it is loosely structured chaos in the private world. So you have to have a entrepreneurial spirit. You have to have an understanding of what the real desired outcome is, and then just unquenchable desire to go make it happen. And I think that's the skill set that Rangers bring to the table.
And I've talked to former Rangers or non-Rangers that have transitioned. That's where they struggled, is with the lack of structure and wanting to move things forward, but it wasn't moving at the speed that they're used to. So they just struggled in that time there, and just trying to build patience and stuff. They just found difficulty in that.
Well, it's a trust thing too. Always quote Reagan: "Trust but verify."
Yes.
The private sector is looking at you, saying, "Hey, we really want you. We know you've got the skill sets. Come on, let's do it." Well, let's verify you really want to do this. Right. So there's that little transitional piece where I think they just need to grab it by the horns and go. That's what they're paid to do. That's what the private sector wants. Just go do it. And most leaders, especially if they have a vulnerability concept, are gracious in that. If you screw up, they'll say, okay, great, let's don't do that again. But what did you learn from it? And one thing we always say, and this is such a Ranger mindset, is don't ever say, what'd you do wrong? Look at it and say, what did I do right? What I need to do differently next time.
Right.
Wrong is just... it's just negative. Nobody wants that. But if you can approach this concept, this get it done attitude, and you're willing to be vulnerable, you're willing to make mistakes, and you're willing to say to yourself, I did that right, or darn, next time I'll do that differently, that's what the private sector wants. Right. They want you to learn from that issue and make it better next time. Because it's just, there's no rule book. Well, there's a few rules. But
not as many as we have in the service.
Lord, no. And they're flexible. So I always say, is it a law, a rule, a regulation, or a concept? Yeah. I need to know. Because if it's a law, we're going to do it very strict. Yeah. If it's a guideline, a rule, or a concept, then let's play with this a little bit and see what we need to do.
Yeah. So transitioning to talk more about transition, networking and relationships, mentorship. Officers in the DoD at large are better at mentorship. They kind of, because they're more transactional in organizations, they're out, they latch onto somebody to help them, bring them back in. The NCO side, we're not as mentorship. We do more counseling and direct, work related, but not life stuff. Yeah. So what's the importance of networking and mentorship and building those relationships?
It is very, very important, but you also have to realize that it's seasonal. So when you come out of the military, there's this concept I talk about all the time called multiplication by subtraction, which means if you want to multiply yourself, sometimes you got to let some things go. So if you've got people that are saying to you, no, do it this way because that's the way we've always done it, or that's the way we do it in regiment, but it's not necessarily how a Fortune 100 company would do it, you might have to let parts of your comfortable network go in order for you to multiply and go out. And that's what I mean by seasonal. Like if people go back and say, well, I had all these friends in high school I never see anymore, and then I had new sets of friends in college, and then I had new sets of friends in the military, and then I had another set of friends in the private sector. Those are seasonal opportunities for you to continue to grow. So almost let the momentum find this network for you, and be willing to cut some things out of your past, even though it's very, very comfortable and you know some people. But if you're going to multiply, sometimes you have to subtract first. So network's important, but it'll find itself. But you have to let go of some things.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor of mine was, you got to, in this initial start of your transition, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be super uncomfortable making those phone calls and reaching out to those to those people. And another question I get is work-life balance. Yeah. A lot of people transition out of the military to be home with the kids more, to do more, and sometimes it's not reasonable. It's not there. And I always say
it's a myth.
It's not work-life balance. It's your pursuit of work-life balance is what's really important. What's your thoughts on?
Let's go back to words, like we were talking about earlier. I don't think there's any such thing as work-life balance, because if you really balance it, you say, well, I'm going to sleep 8 hours, I'm going to play 8 hours, I'm going to work 8 hours. Tell me how that goes for you. Right. Friedman wrote a book in the late 1990s called The World is Flat. Not a flat earth guy, but he was saying that we live in a 24/7 technology world where, if we're doing some work in Japan and it happens to be 12, 13 hours ahead of us, they're going to be texting you at night. They're going to be saying things to you. It doesn't mean you have to answer it. But we don't live in a world where you can really disconnect anymore in business. But if you change the word, then you change your mindset. So I always tell people, if you're pursuing a work-life balance, that's a myth. It's not true. Pursue work-life harmony. And harmony means that your personal life, your professional life, and your spiritual life are in such harmony that whatever decision you make, you're not in any conflict with them. Now, it might mean you're on a phone call at 11 o'clock at night after you put your kids in bed because you're trying to serve somebody on the other side of the world, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning there or 10 o'clock in the morning. But you're in harmony because it's right for you personally, it's right for you professionally, and it's right for you in your spirit or your gut because you're serving somebody. You're not forcing somebody because of your balance to say, I can only live here. But you have to be able to transition that to your family. You have to give them the time that they deserve to do it too. So I've done phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm talking to somebody on the other side of the world. Right. Or I'll come home and tell my wife, hey, look, I need 15 minutes after dinner because I want to go in there and have a conversation with somebody in New Zealand. And they decided to do this call at 6 in the morning for them, but it's 8 at night. So that to me is harmony. Balance is a myth. Don't do it. Don't think about it. Right. Math just doesn't work. Right. Harmony is what you want.
Right. And then that balance. So coming out of the military, we're used to structure, 06, you show up, 6:30, you got formation, you go work out.
Yeah.
And you have a routine. And a lot of guys I see, they fall out of a routine. Do you have a routine?
Oh, hell
routine just as important on the other side?
Absolutely had to have a routine. A buddy of mine, Robin Sharma, wrote a book years ago called The 5 a.m. Club. And I read it and I was like, gosh, it's so good. So everybody needs to buy and read The 5 a.m. Club. But I'll tell you real quick what it says. He basically said in the work environment, if you're seeking harmony and with all the moving parts you have, especially in a leadership position, leading the family, leading a company, your friends, or just trying to make that transition, if you're trying to reserve time for yourself till evening or night, you're going to fail miserably, and which means you're going to get out of shape, you're going to lose your discipline, you're going to fall apart. So what his challenge was, and I've been doing this for roughly 3 years now, is you're up at 4:45 in the morning. You're up. I'm in the gym by 5 a.m. I work out pretty hard from 5 till probably about 6:15, 6:20, maybe 6:30. Hit the showers, and I'm on the road head to my office by 7:15. I'm in the office by 7:30. But what happens then is I've given myself 2.5 hours that was me. Yeah. I ate a healthy breakfast. I worked out. I feel good about myself. My brain is turned on. I am ready to go. And I don't feel any pressure of coming home at the end of the day and saying, oh, I need to go to the gym and work out. And I've already accomplished that. So sometimes I'll come home and it helps with the harmony because I can say, yeah, let's go have dinner. Or, yeah, I've got to do some things, but, I can do that tomorrow. So my structure is all about having my personal time super, super early. It's peaceful, as you know. I think 5 in the morning is the greatest time of the day. And then, I don't know. But you have to be structured. You have to be disciplined. And you have to commit to yourself first, because if you don't have your head and heart aligned, if you don't have yourself in a healthy mode, you can't do anything out there. So I'm a big believer in Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. Club. Yeah,
and I think a good word, I think intentional is what I say.
You got to be great word.
Intentional about your time, because as I transitioned, some of that structure started to fall off, and I kind of went down I wasn't working out like I was, and I had to recenter, and now I do 5 a.m. I'm studying because I'm finishing my undergrad, 5 to 6:30. I help get the kids up, take them to school. And, I just realized 20 years of doing structure, why would I stop all of a sudden? And I think a lot of that,
you can't.
And stop moving. Yeah. Don't ever stop moving. I think it's just so critical.
And business has known that for years too. Zig Ziglar once said that if you work every day like it's the day before you go on vacation, you only have to work 4 days a week. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, How do you do that? Well, you have a commitment to get things done because you know you're trying to go on vacation tomorrow. It's amazing with commitment and structure what you can accomplish.
Right.
So there's this whole movement out there about structure and getting back to it, because I think for the vast majority of the workforce during COVID, the work from home philosophy, at first it was really cool. Now it's we're starting to slip a little bit,
Right.
and people are falling off. And I think they've got to get back into structure or they'll have problems.
Yeah. We've talked about balance and work, and let's talk a little bit about Don, the father, and the husband, because that's a whole other side of life. So your kids are older now and out of the house.
Yeah.
What are some lessons learned? A lot of younger Ranger fathers in general, what are some lessons learned in there as you're trying to chase the business life and be a father? And
it's hard. I told somebody the other day, I said, if you're ever at a trivia contest, you want me on the team, because I have so much senseless knowledge. It's amazing. But if the category is the 1990s, forget it, because I have no memory of the 1990s because I had 3 babies at home. So I was doing international work then. I would literally day trip or 2-day trip to Europe and back, or Mexico or somewhere, Tokyo, and I'll come home, my wife would shove 3 babies in my hand. I just said, what is this? So I have no memory of the 1990s. But what I have learned is 2 things as a father: that you need to be purposeful and present. So when you are in that moment, be there. Don't have your cell phone. Don't do anything. Now, obviously, you can't always do that, but you do that. But then I always tell people, create memorable moments with your children, because there's one thing I was fascinated with, several things with kids. One, I realized with 3 adult boys now, or men, when you're young and you're a young parent and you got multiple kids, you think they're all going to be the same. You can treat them exactly the same. They're nowhere close to being the same, right?
No.
But if you can say, look, we're going on vacation, we're going to go to the beach, or we're going to do something, find a memorable moment, something that's so unique and special there that they will remember that, because the beaches are all going to blur together. The golf is going to blur together. Disney World is going to blur together. Whatever you do with your kids, it's going to be a big blur. But if you can be purposeful about being present with them and take a moment to create a memory that's so special, then that's what they're going to be talking about for years. And that's what will create that bond with you. So purposeful, present, and find those memorable moments. Don't think that, we took them to Disney World, it's okay. Yeah, what'd you do? Would you go to if you had a daughter, did you take her to the princess thing and do that? She'll remember that forever. Years ago, I was taking my boys skiing. We were in Whistler, so we'd gone into Vancouver and we were going north, and they've been skiing all their lives, snow skiing, and it does blur together. They don't remember some trips, but I thought, well, why can I make this memorable? So I made a few phone calls, and looking back on it, I probably shouldn't have done this, but I rented this old World War II float plane and found this guy who looked like he was there the first time and got him to fly us all over Victoria Sound and out over Vancouver and land on the ocean and come back up. And the boys still talk about that, especially one of them who missed it because he decided to go buy some hat or something and missed the takeoff. But that was a memorable moment. The skiing is awesome, but that blurs together. Right. It's that intentional thing that you do that makes it special. So that's why I just tell them, just be intentional. Yeah.
And I think the same can be true probably for your spouse, for your wife.
Absolutely.
Because I've deployed 16 times.
Yeah.
Been gone. I've been home the longest I've ever been home, the last 3 years.
Now, how's that feel?
It's
Who are you? Where am I? What's going on here?
It's dynamic. Sometimes she's like, aren't you deploying soon?
Yeah.
But people think they're going to get out of service, and that's not going to be there. You're going to be around all the time. But depending on what you do, it could be very similar to your life you had in service. How do you keep that connection with your spouse during all those?
Well, it's easier with technology now than it used to be. You can FaceTime, you can connect. We're doing this during Labor Day week, so I'm home this week, but I'm usually gone either late Sunday nights, early Monday mornings through Wednesday. That's sort of my travel time, international or domestic. And I swear, I've been doing this for 35 years, traveling like that. And at first, it was harder, but now we are so connected with iPhones and FaceTime and WhatsApp and everything else. You kind of don't miss it. It's just different. So take advantage of all of that stuff and stay connected on it. And it might be better for your marriage that way at least.
Yeah, keep that communication going the way you can.
Yeah,
and
purposeful.
All the same, be intentional and find time. And before we kind of close out, I do want to cover, so you have a book. right? About the top 1%. And without going all the way down the rabbit hole, can you give a little bit of that insight to what you found out there?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I spent 25 years on Wall Street. I worked for Wall Street firms. I would commute, and this is before cell phones and all that stuff. So I would commute from Atlanta, where I've always lived, to New York, Boston, London, wherever, weekly. And I started noticing these trends of these people who were not connected, but they were elite in their field. So I was working my doctorate at the time, and I got the company to fund the study, and we went back and we said, look, what is it about these people who have no connection? They're not in the same business. They're not in the same culture, language, whatever. But it was like Groundhog's Day, that movie where I could be in Mexico City, Tokyo, Prague, whatever, talking to different people. Yet it seemed like the same thing was happening over and over again because they were the best at what they did. So we did a study to sort of reveal what it is that makes these people special, their cadence, their philosophy, how they approach life, how they speak, to you, and the psychology and the science behind it. Not just, just say this way and it'll work. No, it's more important to understand it. So understanding how the mind works, like I said earlier about gratitude, understand the difference between gratitude and creativity and what drives them, how these elite people use that, how they narrow down communications. Like we know now through science that if you give somebody more than 3 things to do, you have an incredible opportunity for a fail rate. In fact, if you give somebody 4 things to do in one conversation, there's a 25% fail rate. If you give them a 5th thing to do, there's a 50% fail rate. 6 things, forget it. None of it's going to work. So you have to be able to narrow it down, and these elite people were able to communicate in just 2 or 3 things or less. Now, if they had more stuff to do, they would give you another email or tell you have another meeting or do something. But it's just these little things that individually you go, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, but they're doing it, and here's the structure, going back to that word again, of how they do it, but more importantly, why they do it, and hoping they understand it. So, it did well. It's in like 39 countries right now. I'm honored that, the Ranger Regiment reads it, and we have those trainings for them. But it's really about leadership. It doesn't matter what you're doing, how you're doing it. If you want to know what the elite do differently, that's it. And ironically, and not to spoil, I don't care, I'll spoil the end of it. It's not about leadership. It's not about sales. It's about serving other people. That they wake up and they run to work every day saying, how can I be the best I can be at serving other people? And when you approach your life that way and you follow certain proven methods, it's like the universe just gets everything out of your way. Those obstacles get smaller. The opportunities seem to be there. The struggles, while in the moment are hard, you just get the opportunity to say, I've done this before. And go out there and do it. So, it was great. It's called The Perfect Plan.
Yeah. So the Perfect Plan, definitely go out there and check it out.
Yeah.
It's a quick read. It's not.
It's made for an airplane,
and it's full of some insights that I'm digging back into it again.
Yeah.
Right
or
now.
if somebody wants it, you know what they can do? Just send you an instant message or whatever through YouTube or whatever. I'll be happy to send them a free electronic copy of it.
Oh, that's amazing. I appreciate that, Don. So, as you look back, right? If we look back to 20-year-old Don, and this question usually to a service member and what they would do different in service.
Yeah.
But as you see how business is emerging and how things are changing, and there's words like fintech out there now, what would you do now as a 20-year-old to prepare for the next 35 years?
There's 2 answers to that question. Honestly, nothing. Because I'm so happy with where my life is today, of which none of it could have been planned. Now, there were some terrible moments, during my life. There's been some extreme heartaches, some things that I would not want to repeat, but it helped me be who I am today, which means I can go out there and serve more people, employ more people, train at the regiment, do things that I think make an impact. So honestly, I wouldn't change anything, although there were some things that I really wish hadn't happened, but it made me a better person today. But to stay in the philosophy of the question, if I did go back and look at it, I think I would have been a little bit more patient. I think I would tell the 20-year-old version of me, breathe. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Because I spent the earlier years of my life in scarcity. My parents were Depression era people. I'll tell you, my dad was a military guy in a different time. A completely different time. And so it was always, you just got to work. You got to get a paycheck. Don't worry about anything. Just work. Work 2 jobs. Work 3 jobs. Work whatever. And it wasn't really about making an impact. It was about survival. And there's an old proverb that says that the impact of a generation will last for 6 to come. In other words, words, what you tell your children is going to trickle down in a smaller percentage for 5 generations, unless you purposely cut that. So I had Depression era parents who were very in a scarcity mode, and there's no judgment there. I mean, it's that I can't imagine not knowing if you're going to eat that day.
Right.
I mean, that's how it was. So they passed a little bit of that on to me, which made me want to go faster than I probably should have, and probably made some mistakes that, looking back on it, I wish I didn't, but it's okay. It worked out. But I think patience is the important thing. Because like we were saying about 9/11, blink your eyes, it's been 20 years.
You're
I mean,
right.
good Lord. If you told me it was 10 years, I believe you. But 20 years? And so I think patience is the key. It'll work out. It's going to be fine. But I didn't feel that back then, that's for sure.
Well, I could talk to you for hours.
Okay, let's do it.
Listen
I'm
to
good.
you for hours.
I'm only halfway through my Red Bull. We can do this.
I appreciate you driving down from Atlanta. You're so gracious with your time and your mentorship to not only me, but some friends of mine and the Ranger community at large. We appreciate it. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime because there's so much in here that we could unpack. For those out there watching and listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll put the links for the books that Don mentioned in the notes below. Again, just thank you, Don. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because this is making an impact. Like we said, I bumped into somebody in Colorado Springs the other day who knew you, and I just started talking to him because he was in his uniform and he had his Ranger tab on, and mentioned this work. So you're doing great stuff, Yuma. Keep it up, because you never know. And this is one thing I will tell you. I'll brace you for this, okay? Yeah. As you get a little bit older in life, like I am, you start going, gosh, was it worth it? And then out of nowhere, somebody will come up to you that you haven't seen in 20, 25, 30 years or 5 years, and they'll say, hey, you might not remember, but you said something to me one time that made an impact on me, and I was able to go do something with that. And you're right, most of the time you don't remember. So everything that you're doing is planting those seeds that you personally might not see grow, but the world sees grow. No. So thank you for what you're doing. So you're making a big impact, and this is a great show, and vulnerability is the key to leadership. So thank you.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it.
Thank you.